The airport screens blinked red with cancellations, but I barely registered them. All I could think about was my bed, my quiet kitchen, and the mug I left on the counter that morning before my flight. When the airline handed out hotel vouchers, I declined. I booked the earliest red-eye I could find, boarded with tired legs and a lukewarm cup of airport coffee, and landed back in Oregon just before sunrise. The sky was still gray when the driver turned onto my street. The houses stood quietly, lights-off curtains drawn. But as we approached the bend, my stomach turned. A truck, white with peeling decals, was parked in my driveway. Its back was open, the lift gate down. Two men in sweatshirts were hauling a box toward it. At first, I thought someone had the wrong address. Then I saw the box. It was labeled Master Room, Linens. My linens. I told the driver to stop and stepped out before the car had fully parked. The air smelled damp. The grass was wet under my shoes. And there on my front steps, crouched low with something glinting in her hand, was Sloane. She froze when she saw me. The tool slipped from her fingers and clinked on the concrete. "You weren't supposed to be here until Tuesday," she said. I didn't answer that. I walked past her, pulled my key from my coat pocket, and opened my own door. Inside, the smell hit me, first paint maybe, or dust, from things that had been moved. The house sounded wrong. It echoed. Sloane stood behind me in the doorway, still trying to explain. I didn't listen. I stepped further in and saw the empty wall where the china cabinet used to be. One of the moving men brushed past me, nodding politely. He didn't know. I turned to the side table. My mail was missing. Behind me, Sloane cleared her throat. "We thought it would be easier this way." Micah said. I cut her off with a look, stepped into the living room, and saw the bare floors where our rug used to lie. The sound of my heels on the bare hardwood echoed through the house, sharper than I remembered. The rug was gone, our rug. The one Richard and I picked out after 30 years of marriage, worn soft by time and morning coffee spills. Now the floor was scratched, where the legs of furniture had been dragged without care. The sun, coming through the window, caught dust that hadn't settled yet. Sloane trailed behind me, still holding her phone, like she might need to prove something. Micah thought it'd be easier to move in now, she said, her voice light, like she was offering a convenience. "While you were away." We figured it was time. I didn't respond. I just kept walking. The hallway shelf was empty. The spot where the ceramic bird used to sit had a faint ring of dust untouched, except for the space it once filled. In the dining room, a single folding chair leaned against the wall. The long table was gone. So were the framed photographs that lined the ledge, my father in uniform, my wedding day. Micah, as a boy, covered in frosting and beaming. I stepped into the kitchen, opened the pantry. The shelves had been wiped down. The dishes I only used on holidays, gone. Even the heavy baking pans were missing. I turned, slowly taking it in, and noticed one cabinet door hanging open. Inside, family photo albums had been shoved in sideways. Some had pages curling outward, half sleeves, exposed edges bent. I closed the cabinet softly and moved toward the bedroom. The closet door creaked open. My winter coats were gone. 2 of Richard's old shirts were still hanging limp and untouched, like they weren't worth the effort. I turned back toward the front door, stepped around the edge of the empty room, and quietly slid the deadbolt into place. Sloane stood in the entryway watching me. "Where's my wedding ring box?" I asked. She blinked. Her mouth opened, then closed again. I took out my phone and began taking photos room by room, shelf by shelf, documenting what was left. Micah pulled into the driveway like nothing was wrong. Hair still damp from the gym earbuds, looped around his neck, that casual bounce in his step he always wore when he thought he was ahead of a situation. He walked through the front door like it was his. He didn't knock. "Mom," he said, smiling. "Sloane told me you came back early." This is all a misunderstanding." I didn't answer. I just stood by the hallway cabinet with my phone still in hand. He glanced around at the half-emptied room, the taped-up boxes. the quiet tension in the air. Sloane got ahead of herself. He added softer this time. We just thought with you going away and the space here, maybe it was time to make a transition. I nodded slowly and walked into the study. He followed. Inside the filing cabinet, the folders were still arranged by year. I pulled one from the back, opened it, and slid a sheet of paper across the desk toward him. He picked it up and scanned it. His face changed by the second. You kept the original deed, he asked, like it was supposed to be his now. I never signed it over, I replied. Did either of you think to check whose name was still on this house? He didn't speak. He didn't have to. The way his eyes dropped told me what I needed to know. They'd assumed I was done. That because I'd let them use my mailing address, let them store boxes in the garage, let them talk about our yard, my silence meant permission, but I hadn't signed anything, and I hadn't surrendered. I picked up the phone from the desk and dialed Angela Price, the only attorney I ever needed, more than once. She answered on the first ring. I'm going to need your help, I said simply. While we spoke, I began pulling folders from the drawer insurance bank records, the trust. Every paper they didn't think I still had. Every line they didn't know I could still draw. I opened the guest room closet to check for damage. The shelves were bare, but on the floor, pushed behind an empty suitcase, sat a box I didn't recognize. The handwriting on the label was mine years ago, but the new black marker over it wasn't. Misk Garage, it read. I pulled it out and peeled back the taped flaps. Inside, folded with surprising care, was the quilt I made the year Richard and I married. It was the first big project I'd ever finished, uneven in places, but warm. Beneath it, wrapped in a yellowed envelope, were his letters from his first deployment, the corners soft with age. At the bottom sat his old watch, the crystal cracked, still set to a time that no longer mattered. I sat on the edge of the bed and held the quilt in my lap. It still smelled faintly of cedar, and the drawer we kept it in for years before Sloane moved that dresser to the garage to make space for the crib. Footsteps approached. Micah stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets like a boy again. I didn't know they packed that, he said. They said it was just garage stuff. You wouldn't miss it. I didn't answer. I kept my hands on the quilt and waited. He shifted. Sloane's friend Claire, she's a realtor. She said if we staged the place now, we'd be ready to list before the end of the month. We figured you'd want to move closer to Aunt Marie anyway. Smaller place, less upkeep. He looked up like I was supposed to agree, like all this had been for me. So you made a plan, I said quietly, to sell the house I sleep in. He opened his mouth, but there was nothing in him strong enough to meet the weight of that sentence. I stood and placed the quilt gently back in the box, then carried it out with me. The hallway felt longer than usual as I walked it, as if the walls themselves had shifted while I was gone. Angela arrived just after 2. She didn't need a tour or small talk. She stepped over the mess without comment and set her briefcase down at the dining room table, or where the table used to be. I offered her a chair from the patio, one of the few things left untouched. I handed over the stack photos I took that morning, copies of the deed, a printout of the retirement account access log, and last footage from the side yard camera. Micah had remembered to unplug the front one. He'd forgotten about the motion-activated unit by the fence. Angela watched a short clip of movers carrying boxes marked master bedroom and books, donate, while Sloane stood at the porch giving directions. She didn't react, just noted the timestamp and nodded. Who else has keys, she asked. Just Micah, I said. Or so I thought. We were halfway through discussing next steps when the front door opened and Sloane walked in, all bright voice and feigned surprise. Oh, you're still here? Good. I was hoping we could talk through things calmly. Angela didn't look up. You'll want to stop talking now. Sloane blinked at her, thrown by the tone. I'm sorry. Angela closed the folder in front of her. Anything you say from this point on may become part of a pending civil claim. I suggest silence. Sloane turned to me. Is this really necessary? Micah arrived minutes later holding 2 coffees, like this was just a family sit-down. But when he saw Angela and the documents lined up on the table like chess pieces, his shoulders dropped. He set the cups down without a word. Angela spoke calm and measured. You entered this home without permission. You removed property. You initiated a process to sell a house you don't own. The paper trail is clear. Micah finally sat. He didn't try to argue this time. He just listened. I didn't gloat. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Angela had the floor and she wasn't done. I went to the credit union the next morning. Not because I wanted to, but because Angela said it was time to get everything locked down. Bank accounts, retirement funds, the trust. I hadn't touched most of it in months. I lived simply. But that didn't mean it was up for grabs. The clerk behind the glass recognized me. She smiled and asked how Vermont had been. I told her the trip had been cut short. She looked at the screen, then frowned. There was a request made on your retirement account 2 days ago, she said, scrolling. Transfer to an external account. It didn't go through signature mismatch, but it was flagged. I leaned in. Who requested it? She hesitated. It was under your son's name, Micah. Angela was already on the line when I stepped outside. She didn't sound surprised, just asked for the transaction number and the clerk's name. We'll file it under attempted financial fraud, she said. It helps establish pattern and intent. Back at home, I climbed the attic ladder. The hatch groaned just like always, but when I stepped up, I knew immediately things were missing. Boxes I'd packed decades ago, my high school yearbooks, a wooden crate of my mother's keepsakes, the trunk with the photo slide projector. Gone. I stood there in the dim light, one hand gripping the low beam, letting the emptiness settle around me. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Dana next door. She'd seen the truck again 2 days earlier. Sent a photo movers lifting furniture Micah in the driveway, laughing with one of them. His arm rested on the open gate like he owned it. I stared at the image for a long moment, then typed back. Thanks. Keep that photo. I saved the image, forwarded it to Angela, then climbed down the ladder and closed the attic behind me. There were still more rooms to check, more pieces to count. The package arrived mid-morning, forwarded from the mail hold I'd placed before the trip. I hadn't thought twice about it, just another stack of flyers catalogs, maybe a magazine or two. But one envelope was heavier, glossier. My name typed neatly on the front, though the sender's address wasn't familiar. Inside was a real estate brochure, sleek, expensive. A high-rise condo overlooking the river downtown. Photos of open-concept kitchens, marble floors, and private elevators. The kind of places Sloan always pointed out when we passed construction downtown. Stuck to the first page was a yellow post-it. Sloan, this one has the wraparound balcony we liked. Call her by Monday. I stared at the handwriting. It wasn't Micah's. This was her doing. I didn't shred it. I didn't even fold it. I laid it on the kitchen counter, opened my laptop, and went straight to the county website. I searched my property records, holding my breath even though I knew what I'd find. There it was. An inquiry logged just 6 days earlier. Name Sloan R. Huxley. Purpose, title, status inquiry. Angela answered on the second ring. I didn't even need to explain. I just said, there was a title search. Send me the screenshot, she said. We'll add it to the record. It shows intent. She called back 20 minutes later. Her voice was clipped, businesslike. We're moving forward with attempted deed fraud and elder financial exploitation. I'll file by end of day. I hung up and sat with that. Not angry, just quiet, steady. I walked to the den, pulled open the drawer with the emergency documents, and filled out the form I'd been avoiding. A no-contact order for both of them, Micah and Sloan. My lawyer would file it with the county clerk tomorrow. I sealed the envelope, pressed it flat, and slid it into my bag. Then I stood up and walked toward the guest room. There was something else I needed to clear out before the locks were changed. I spent the morning in silence, surrounded by piles of my own history. The dining room floor looked like an archive of boxes, half-open stacks of papers, and things that once mattered. I made 2 piles, what stayed and what didn't. The quilt stayed. It had Richard's stitches in the corners where I'd run out of thread. The photo albums too, the first house, the camping trips, the Christmas mornings, when Micah still looked up to me. I found the wooden box of letters Richard had written while working night shifts at the hospital, promising me we'd retire by the ocean. Those went in the keep pile. The rest went to the other side of the room. Old tax papers, faded receipts, knickknacks that collected dust instead of memories. A stack of Micah's school awards, participation certificates, a faded ribbon from a spelling bee. I couldn't keep reminders of who he used to be. By afternoon, I carried the unwanted things out back and lit them in the fire pit. The paper curled fast, the ink bleeding away into smoke. I watched until it was ash, until there was nothing left to salvage. The phone buzzed. A text from Micah. "You always overreact." I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it. Instead, I opened my laptop and printed a detailed invoice, itemized damages, missing property, and Angela's fees. I sealed it in an envelope and mailed it certified. Angela called that evening. "They've been served," she said. "Civil action is in motion. You won't need to speak to them again." I thanked her, hung up, and stood in the doorway of the living room. The house felt colder than before, but it was my cold, my quiet. I walked to the wall panel and reset the thermostat. Then I reprogrammed the alarm with a new code, one only I would know. When the system beeped confirmation, I exhaled. The house was sealed again, and tomorrow the locks would be next. By the end of the week, the locksmith had changed every lock on the property. Not just the front door, but the garage, attic, hatch, side gate, even the rusted mailbox at the curb. Every entry point rekeyed, every copy accounted for. Only mine remained. I left a note with Dana across the street and spoke to the Taylors next door. Told them there had been an incident, nothing dramatic, but that I'd changed my number and updated my mailing address. They nodded, understanding more than I said. The next morning, someone sent me a screenshot of a post Sloan had made online. A vague complaint about being unfairly pushed out by someone who promised us everything. She didn't use my name, but it was clear enough. No comments, no likes, just silence. I deleted the message and went about my day. At the store, I bought new sheets, simple, clean, soft enough to sleep without remembering. I came home, stripped the guest bed, and pulled everything from the closet. Wedding favors I'd kept out of guilt. Baby clothes I was told to hold on to just in case. Spare toothbrushes. Stale potpourri. I bagged what needed to go. Wiped the shelves down. Vacuumed under the bed. The room was still quiet, still painted in the soft cream I'd chosen years ago. But for the first time in a long while, it didn't feel like it was waiting for someone. I didn't make it up like a guest room. No fresh towels. No welcome basket. I folded the new sheets onto the bed, set one lamp to low, and closed the door behind me. Not locked. Just shut. In the kitchen, I made tea and leaned against the counter, watching the steam rise. No movement outside. No truck in the driveway. No knock at the door. For the first time in weeks, there was nothing to brace for. The next morning, I would meet with Angela. One last time to finalize the paperwork that would change everything going forward. The voicemail came just after sunrise. I let it ring through without hesitation. Later, I listened not out of curiosity, but to confirm what I already expected. Micah's voice slower than usual. "We didn't mean to hurt you. It got out of hand. Maybe we can talk?" I pressed delete before he could say more. The house was quiet, and I kept it that way. The front door remained locked. I no longer flinched at every sound outside. The moving truck that once idled in my driveway was long gone, and with it, the noise that had tried to uproot my life. Angela's email came through just before noon. Subject line, finalized documents. I opened the attachments carefully updated, trust revised inheritance instructions, and confirmation of the no contact orders. My signature was already in place, hers beside it. It was all tidy, legally sealed. I downloaded the updated deed and printed a copy, then walked it to the small, fireproof safe in my closet. I placed it alongside the originals, the birth certificates, the letters, the marriage license worn thin at the edges. It fit there easily. Nothing bulky about peace. I poured a cup of tea, plain and hot, and pulled a chair to the front window. The trees lining the street had started to turn golden and rust-colored, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. Leaves drifted slowly past the mailbox. A boy on a bike pedaled by his backpack swinging behind him. I didn't recognize him, but he waved. I nodded back. Inside the house no longer echoed. It didn't feel full, but it no longer felt emptied by force. It felt settled. I reached for the folded list I'd written weeks ago, things to restore, things to reclaim. Only 2 remained. One of them was done this morning. The other could wait. I folded it again, smaller this time, and slipped it into the drawer by the phone. Then I leaned back, let the warmth of the cup rest between my palms, and let the day pass without explanation.